You are living proof that in a business, you actually don't have to leave a company to grow in that company. You joined Blish Mize in 2001 as the receptionist.
I became our first female merchandise manager, and that's a fact that I'm incredibly proud of.
And in 25 years, you actually have become the vice president of purchasing.
They were willing to invest in me in time and growth opportunity, and we share core values of what a family business is. The messy middle, in large part, is 3/4 of my career, right? I would say decide. I have and had opportunities to either leave or stay. Again, just being willing and open. And I committed to myself at some point in my company is to continue saying yes.
Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Couch. This is the spot where leaders talk about the stories, strategies, and systems that win in the building industry. We unpack how leaders and brands build their reputations and become unmistakable.
Thank you for joining me, Sarah Lee. I'm going to do your intro. And we actually spoke on the phone. I'm so excited to talk about this because Sarah has a very interesting background. She's been in the business and done a lot of things, so I can't wait to dig in here. You are living proof that in a business, you actually don't have to leave a company to grow in that company. You joined Blish Mize in Kansas in 2001 as the receptionist. And in 25 years, you actually have become the vice president of purchasing at one of the oldest and most respected wholesale distribution products companies in the country. This company has been family owned since 1871, which is incredible. And you are still going strong in the 5th generation. And I know that most businesses, only 1% get to the 4th generation. It's like very, very small get to 5th generation. So that's a really incredible feat. You didn't just climb the ladder by leaving and going somewhere else. You did it in-house, and I really love your story. You've learned from every department and promotion you've had, and now you're deciding what over 1,500 independent retailers across 13 states have on their shelves. So welcome, Sarah Lee. Please give her a round of applause. All right, tell me about this receptionist to VP story, because most people do feel like they have to leave, especially in a company maybe that's in a smaller town or a smaller area, to grow. What made you stay, and what did you know about this company that made you decide, like, okay, I'm going to tough it out and go through 25 years of all different roles here at Blish Mize?
Right. Thank you. First, I'll clarify with a name like Sarah Lee, it's probably the number one question that I get. I'm not the brand. So I found a company in which to start my career. That happened to be Receptionist back in 2001. And why I stayed, and bear with me, I'll take you on a ride. I've done a lot of roles in this company, and Receptionist was my first exposure to our vendor reps and our vendor community, and having that element of what our industry is about. From there, I joined our catalog department. That was exposure to the 50,000 products that Blish Mize backs in our distribution center. That was a promotion opportunity that I was offered. Shortly thereafter, I was offered a promotion in our advertising department. This is where my role was to help our own independent retailers grow and promote their stores. That opens up my knowledge of the brands that we're stocking and doing business with. And in 2012, there was an opportunity in our purchasing department, and I put in for this promotion. I wanted this job. It was an assistant buyer. I got the job, and that's where my role in purchasing and my passion for it, in knowing what it would take to be where I'm at today, I became our first female merchandise manager, and that's a fact that I'm incredibly proud of.
Yeah.
That overall was a catalyst to advancement. My predecessor at the time announced his retirement. I threw my hat in the ring, right? There were a lot of reasons why I might not want to do that. You weigh every decision and what you want to do and grow for your own career. And hindsight being what it is in 2020, I wouldn't look back and I would do it all over again. So we developed a purchasing director position in kind of a grooming and learn and grow under my predecessor for a 2-year period. And in his final retirement, I took over in 2020 and during COVID, I like to consider that trial by fire, and here we are today.
Yeah.
So basically, I stayed because they were willing to invest in me in time and growth opportunity, and we share core values of what a family business is, and I really take to that and our goal to service the customer. So full circle, our values align.
When you got that job and you took that first step from receptionist, which first of all, I'll just say those jobs that you think maybe aren't going to be a good learning, like you're like, oh, I'm just the receptionist. You're not just the receptionist. You're, like you said, talking to everyone who walks in or calls. You're building relationships with people. You're helping people. You're kind of the gatekeeper, truly. Did you realize at that moment when you went from there to the next step, like how big of a deal that was going to be for you to have that background, that it was a ladder for you, like you really were going to be able to foundationally use that skill?
Not at the time. Not at the time, because admittedly, I would say it did feel a little just receptionist,
Yeah.
right? I knew I wasn't going to stay there. That wasn't the end of it for me. But in hindsight, that's exactly what it was. It was a way to show my company I can communicate, I can engage, and learn in basically every step. So I know it now. I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, and I would definitely just say that throughout my life, a lot of the things that I got thrown into or maybe had to do, it felt like having to do it because no one else would, or I just felt like I was thrown into it. Those now are the things that I'm like, wow, I'm really glad I did that project because it built on that. Can you tell me about some of those in your examples? Because I know you've been through a lot. Maybe some jobs that you didn't love, but taught you something, and some that you did love that taught you what you wanted to do more of.
Certainly. And I would think we would all agree that we all have those. And I had one in particular comes to mind. But it's a learning experience, right? In how to become a leader in every part of my career past has shaped the leader that I am today. I drew from those maybe less desirable jobs. The departments that I have under my umbrella today, I am able to make changes within those. If it was a grievance or pull my hair out every Monday, I have to come in and do this part of my job. Guess what? I have the ability now to make those changes, to work with my IT department and make it easier for the person I have in that role today. So really that ability, that's part of where my value comes in knowing the organizational mentality of my own company.
I love that. We were talking a little earlier and you said something that I thought was really interesting about sometimes you are in a bad situation or a situation you don't love and you see what's wrong that you can fix, and kind of using that first principles thinking of what if we did this a different way. How do you get around, because our industry historically is not known for being really loving of change, technology or regular just people change. How do you get around that, especially with your team, with, hey, we're going to change the way we've always done it and there could be a better way? What's your approach there?
And I that statement of in a lot of ways, when you've been doing, my company's 155 years old. There's a lot of, this is the way we've always done it. And that happens just because people are resistant to change. However, with things that we learn, whether it's catalysts such as COVID, let's test the theory that is this the best way to still continue to do it? If it's not, let's talk about it. Let's get some feedback from the ones who are actually doing it and make those appropriate changes. It's not easy for people to change, but I'm a passionate person and my own work history tells you I'm open to the change, right? I can be met with a challenge, but it's important to adapt and continue to utilize ways to grow something. Just because if we did it that way 50 years ago, it worked then, but let's make sure it still works today.
Yeah, I love that checkpoint. I want to talk a little bit about your place in the supply chain, because Blish Mize is in the two-step world where they're in between the end user and the manufacturer, which is an interesting place to be. And you're talking to a lot of people, vendors and customers. You're a real connector. So what does that mean for you and your day-to-day as a purchasing VP, thinking about you're having to go through so many different people and have so many different relationships you have to build, and your team's doing the same thing? Tell me about that and how important that is in your role.
Certainly. So I would say with a family-owned and operated business that we still are, relationships are our key biggest asset in a lot of ways. So our role is finding what our customer base needs and how do we provide that. We really provide a one-stop shop, a solution-based source for independent, typically mom and pop rural hardware stores.
Yeah.
And that's where we are better suited to be working with these manufacturers, using our own buying power, our technology to better facilitate individual independent stores. And that's where shows like this come into play to make sure that we're still finding those avenues to provide and be the best asset to our brick and mortar stores that we can be.
Absolutely. When you're walking a show like this or you're buying something for the warehouse, you have 1,500 independent retailers that you're thinking about in 13 states. What are the questions that you're asking about products? What is your filter? How are you deciding yes versus no for a product or a line?
Certainly. The key factor is in walking a show like this for me is booth presence and retail packaging, right? If it can stop me, and I've seen countless amounts of product at retail, that's the first filter. Does it get my attention? Second would be, can my stores be successful in this product? That would open the door to be worthy of being stocked in our distribution center. Then we get into the nuts and bolts of, is there room for two-step distribution? Can we be profitable along with our dealer base? And is it a good fit for the clientele that we currently serve? And if it's a yes, it's an easy yes for me because, again, it's not about what I want or my buyers decide we want. It's what our stores are telling us they need.
What are some of the things that do stop the scroll by you walking by? I'm just curious, like when you're walking, what stops you? Because I know I have some, it's usually pink, surprise, shocker. But what are some of your things that, are like, wow, that makes me stop and look? Because there are a lot of people here that have products that are trying to stand out. So what is that from somebody like you that's a decision maker?
Certainly. A number one would be, have I not seen something like that before? Something completely unique and going, that's different enough to catch my attention, or an improvement on an existing category, right? We can see in a lot of cases, this particular tool or item has been the same for the last 25 years. If there's innovation into an existing product or category, I take note of that because that, again, generates some interest in a category that may have been underserved.
You've talked a little bit about where independent hardware retail is going and sort of the shift of what's happening in the market. Tell me what's going on there. Like what do you see you're seeing from a perspective that a lot of people never get to see, where independent retail is going with national brands, with private brands? What are your thoughts on that?
Brand shift happens naturally over time. We have to keep up with that. We have to be, in a lot of ways, personnel at my company will say, we're ready when our customers are. We have to be ahead of those switches, right? We can't be retroactive. So with change in brands over time, brand preference, typically it is rare that we would have a single source supplier within a category, meaning we cover enough territory and geography that we have to have SKU duplication amongst brands. So we may have truly 6 different power tool accessory suppliers. And that's okay because that's the service that we offer. So it's who's the up and coming vendors in a category and can we make a partnership and a go forward relationship with those suppliers?
Love that. Trade shows, we're at one today. I go to a lot of those, I'm sure you do. From a seat as a buyer, what is the debate around that? Like, how important are trade shows like this? And what are you thinking about when you come to these for someone that's displaying where you're spending your time, whether they get, in the catalog or not in the warehouse? What are you thinking about with that at an actual trade show?
To me, these events are industry critical. I have an example that I encountered at this show. I'm walking by a booth, a vendor pulls me out of the aisle. Great, good job, first step, salesman. Pull me out of the aisle, sell me on your product.
Yeah.
And he recognized my name and my company and said, I've been trying to get a hold of you. Well, here's the difference in a cold call email that I get amongst the many emails that I'm inundated with.
Yeah.
Had he and I not been face to face and I saw his product, and the reality is there will be potential for him in our space just by simply me not having the cold call filtered in a email waiting for me. So that face to face, that wouldn't have happened otherwise. There have been other instances over past years. Deals have been closed here on a show floor, which again is critical, and I will continue to support events like this to our industry.
That's great. And great story for all of you who may have a product to see that, like, hey, it's worth your time. But you also got to do some fishing. Like, you got to grab people and say, hey, come look at my stuff and talk to me about my thing. I love that. I also like to research people before trade shows. So if there's someone like you that is going to be here and you know it, like, let's try to figure out who's going to be here so we can find that person and make that connection. That's a powerful tool to be able to use up front, so you don't waste your time, you know? Well, you talked about change and also talked about a 155-year-old company, which is two things that maybe might not seem like they go together. But what is the best thing about having a company like that that maybe has a lot of stability? And then the hardest thing about getting them to change? I'm just curious some of your experiences.
The stability is evidenced in, it's such a rarity. And I'll add that we started out supplying wagon trains going out west, right, in 1871. So you think about that today. Even if change may be resistant by one's natural nature, the reality is we have changed over time. Our biggest benefit is technology. My company presidents and CEOs have always been an advocate for technology, and that is instrumental in how we can change. It's not always easy, right?
Sure.
There has to be a force behind it. There has to be a reason, quite honestly. Change for the sake of change is not beneficial, but when it's necessary and a reason, they're willing to do it.
Yeah.
That's how we get here today, 155 years later.
That's great. I can't wait to see what you do in the next 155 years. I want to talk about leadership a little bit. I find that often the skills that make us exceptional individual contributors sometimes can hold us back or be a deterrent when you become a leader, or you just have to shift them totally. You going from a great individual performer, even as a director level, to now having a big team, what has that leadership journey been like for you to go from receptionist to a person running a giant team and responsible for a lot of products and people in the warehouse? Tell me about that and how you're handling that, and what's been some of the great things and the challenges.
Certainly. So initially, a promotion from a peer, right? A peer being with my buying staff, for example, to a leader is not always the easiest transition. My team is, they're the ones who are actively doing the work on the day-to-day. The leader is meant to lead. COVID, again, change of helm in a vice president of purchasing during that time when the world was upside down, especially in product procurement and inventory. That was a catalyst to be able to step up, show that I could do it, find the ways to get us through this. And that was there's nothing we can't handle together going forward because we've already done this. We've proved success in that. So that was a unforeseen advantage to my part in that, just because it worked out so well to timing help in a leadership role. The other things that I've done over time, I've taken every opportunity to go to leadership trainings and seminars and ever learning and how to be the best leader. The challenges would have been maybe, I draw from a background of working under maybe not the best leaders, right? That's a learning experience as well. Show me the ways of what successful leaders and draw from some of that, and show me the unsuccessful ones. Does it mean that as a leader, I don't learn from that as well? So all in all, just every different step of the way has kind of helped shape my leadership.
Yeah, you touched on it, training and going and seeking out knowledge maybe in places that are internal in your teams or in your company. What would you give advice to someone who wants to be a better leader, maybe wants to go do some training or some kind of, what would you say to them? How can they get started with that? What's some advice?
Certainly. I would say look around this industry. And at one point in my career, I had a mentor. She is instrumental in my confidence, in my growth. I thank her periodically, and leading up to this, she's been on my mind a lot. At the time, she and I didn't know she was mentoring me, right? I had a network opportunity with her, and I would reach out to her, and she would answer my questions. And at certain events, we would get together, and that was so beneficial to my role and growth personally and professionally. I would say use our networking.
Yeah.
ask all of the questions. Don't be afraid of no, right? We're going to have failures. It's just part of life in general. It's how you handle those and take them going forward. But use every means at your disposal in strong women in this industry, strong people in this industry, but find those women that have done it and ask the questions, small ways, help me. I assure you they will be willing to help guide.
I agree. I love that. What was your mentor's name?
Jody Maud.
Jody Maud. Well, thank you, Jody, for being a great mentor to Sarah so she can do the same. Well, I want to just close with this question. You've spent 25 years building expertise in this one amazing company, and you're now risen to VP of Purchasing, doing great things there. What would you say to the women in the room and even the men in the room that are in the messy middle of the climb? Because I think a lot of times we talk about the beginnings and we talk about the mountaintops and we don't speak about the messy middle. So what would you say to those people?
Certainly. The messy middle in large part is 3/4 of my career, right? I mean, and it really is. I would say decide. I have and had opportunities to either leave or stay. Weigh those options, decide for you, but the messy middle can be a stepping stone to the future. Or if decided and that's where you want to stay, it's up to you. But I looked at every opportunity as this is where I am at for now if I continue to do that. So again, just being willing and open, and I committed to myself at some point in my company is to continue saying yes, right? I started out being approached for promotions.
Yeah.
Why would I decline that? If it takes me somewhere in the future, great. If it doesn't, I'm better off than the last step.
Absolutely. And don't be scared to fail some when you start a new role because you're not going to know how to do things. Remember when you first rode a bike, like you probably fell down a few times and it's going to be the same. And hopefully you have the support of people, like you said, around you. So thank you so much for sharing that. Y'all give Sarah a round of applause. Thank you for sharing. And I would love for you to connect to these ladies after. We're going to have time for questions. So be thinking about how that resonates with you and maybe some of the things that you might want to ask them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Grit Blueprint podcast. If this episode helped you think a little differently about how to show up, share it with someone in your building world who needs it. If you're ready to turn visibility into growth, then head to gritblueprint.com to learn more and book a call to talk to us about your growth strategy. Until next time, stay unmistakable.